Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to begin the memorial service from Mrs. Lois Goldfein. For those of you who are here, we ask everyone to please keep your masks on, and also please be sure that your cell phones have been turned off. And the family welcomes everyone who's joining us via live stream. Rabbi Rachel Heaps will be officiating this afternoon.
Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. Even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit that our loved ones gave us cannot be measured and they cannot be weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of their light and some of their warmth will always be with us, bringing us comfort and courage, and eventually, in the fullness of time, healing and peace. We remember Lois Goldfein and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to her family. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Lois's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. Perhaps the most recognizable psalm in the Jewish tradition, as well as in other traditions, is Psalm 23, otherwise known as the Shepherd's Psalm. And it tells of a difficult moment in life, being in the valley of the shadow of death. And even though the psalmist walks through great pain and great fear and anxiety, the psalmist also has great faith and great trust, knowing that those around him, those around everyone in pain, are there to support and are there to bring comfort. Even in the darkest moments of our lives, we have those around us who we love and we can count on. Adonai rohi lo echsar binot eshe yarbitseini amei menuchot yenachaleini nafshi eshovev yancheni v'baglei tzedek leman shemo gam ki elech beged samavet lo ira rakiata imadi shivtecha umishantecha emaya nachamuni ta'aroch lefanai shulchan neged sorerai deshanta v'shemen roshi kosirivaya achto v'chesed yirdefuni kol yamei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai leorech yamim. The inside of our pamphlets, we have the translation of this psalm. We read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. One of our psalms talks about where do we turn when we are in pain? Where do we turn when we have questions? Where do we go when we have the unanswerable question? And the psalmist says, I turn my eyes to the mountain, but for Lois, I think she would turn her eyes to the lake. She would turn her eyes to all of you, and she would find her answers in the loving care and the loving gaze of each one of you. The psalmist says, I turn my eyes to look for help, and she found the help that she needed in each of you, and you can find your help in her eyes as well. Esainai el hecharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Esainai el hecharim me'ayin yavo ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. I turn my eyes to the mountain. From where will my help come? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. Adonai is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going and coming now and forever. Lois showed up in so many different ways in so many different people's lives, and each one with a smile, each one with the expression of friendship. Each person who remembers her has their own little memory of what that looks like for Lois. A question, a meal, a piece of candy. Everyone has their own distinct memories of Lois. So now we have the opportunity to reflect on who she was and the impact she made to all of those around her in this moment of silent reflection. Oh, say shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'akol Yisrael. Vimru amen. Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom. Yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. We're given few instructions from our tradition that tells us what to do when we experience a loss. Few prescriptions of how to move from pain to memory. In fact, really the only prescription we're given is to tell their story. The only commandment that we have at a time like this is to eulogize our loved ones. So perhaps the people who are best suited to tell Lois's story are those who she loved the most. And so I invite first Lois's grandchildren to say a couple words on behalf of her daughter, and then to also share their own stories, and then Tom to share his own story. So Jake, Jamie, Josh.
We're going to start by lighting the cheers candle in honor of my grandmother, who... Yes. We're going to start by lighting the cheers candle in honor of my grandmother, because we all know this is what she'd want. So these words were written by my mother for hers. Dear Mom, aka Loie, there's so much to talk about, reminisce, and celebrate about your long life. There's South Haven, your home away from home for over 90 years. From being an infant to this past Christmas time, your long and loyal relationship with the bulls, passion for animals, which has rubbed on me, years with the horses, becoming a grandma and later a GGLG, great grandma Lois Goldfein. You've weathered and endured hardships and tragic stories during phases of your life as well.
South Haven. You first arrived in 1929 when you were 6 months old, staying with your brother Harold, sister June, and cousin Elaine in her beach house. You made endless childhood memories before your dad, Papa Bill, brought your house for less than $4,000. You grew up on the North Beach, raised me and Larry, gave your grandchildren the best summers of their lives, and celebrated the joys of the beach with your 5 great-grandchildren. The porch was your favorite place where you greeted and had a conversation with every person walking by, friend or stranger. But how you looked forward to the 4 o'clock cocktail party. Our neighbors, one by one, would drop whatever they were doing to come to the porch to be with you, have a drink, and just talk and laugh. We never had enough chairs. Because of you, your grandchildren made lifelong memories which they are sharing with your great-grandchildren during the beautiful sunsets every summer night.
You grew up in Albany Park, went to Roosevelt High School, and met and fell in love with Dad, attending college after the war in Galesburg, Illinois. After getting married at the age of 20, you and Dad built the home you lived in for more than 70 years. You were always so busy, active, and family of the year with the YMCA, active in charity groups, traveling with our horses, bold until the age of 80, and cared for your mother, Nana Jean, who lived to 100 years old.
This is about the Bulls. Honored as the longest living season ticket holder for almost 50 years at Center Court on ESPN in 2015, you and Dad were more than loyal and passionate fans. You were the candy lady, sharing treats with so many friends, fans you didn't even know, ushers, and even the bathroom attendant who returned your favors with annual Christmas gifts. Always on the kissing cam with Dad, cheering on the Bulls to 6 world championships, and always making sure you saved a seat and candy for your grandchildren.
Animals. I grew up riding our horses and living with rescue dogs and cats. You and Dad loved your American saddlebreds, made sure Larry and I knew how to ride, took us and our horses to shows all over the country, always sitting nervously by yourself cheering for us and our champions. You welcomed and opened our house to Larry's dogs and cats he would bring home from his clinic. You were so generous with animal rescue groups, always donating dollars and explaining if every person would give just $1. Every Saturday for many years when I returned from volunteering at Orphans of the Storm, you would greet me on the phone, not with a hello, just how many, wanting to know every detail about each dog that was adopted.
Despite the many joyful moments and memories throughout your life, you had to face pain and tragedies. When you were 26, your older sister June died from rheumatic fever in the back room of our house in South Haven. In your later years, you struggled with the loss of your older brother Harold, but nothing was more heartbreaking painful and life-changing than Larry's sudden and tragic death from a heart attack at his young age of 59. And throughout your 80s, your golden years, you endured 2 bouts of breast cancer and a broken hip, not to mention Dad's declining health and dementia. You never complained. You were always fine because you were Goldfein. And through all the moments of sadness and chronic pain, you were never less than kind-hearted, friendly, and giving to us. Your quiet inner strength always shone through.
During recent years, you enjoyed long weekends in our home. Then came the COVID pandemic, which has changed all of our lives and brought you to us. You seemed to find peace and joy living with us, welcoming the steady flow of visiting nurses with goodie bags filled with lollipops, and always answering their medical questions with, "I'm fine, I'm Goldfein." Just like you did in South Haven, you loved warming yourself on the front yard bench, greeting and having conversations with the endless stream of walkers, young and old, who, of course, became your friends.
We already miss you, your love for watching the Bulls, White Sox, and don't forget the Wheel of Fortune on TV. We miss your greeting cards for any holiday, your excuse for sending your loving sentiments, and of course, chock filled with money. We miss your love for James Patterson books, always reading the endings first before deciding to start them. We miss your daily routines, beginning with your joyful chairs and coffee together with the newspaper, reading the sports pages first, then obituaries, and finally the front page, and always ending with an ice cream cone, feeding half of it to your favorite Shelby. And we miss your cheerfulness, your good nature, and your genuine sweetness. You loved being with us, making our house your home, always appreciative and grateful, and we loved being with you. Cheers to you, Mom.
I so wish I can tell my grandma Lois that so many of her beloved friends came together here to celebrate her incredible life. I want to tell her how much we all love her, maybe let her know that her beloved Chicago Bulls won. So first, good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. It means so much to all of us. Seeing folks here from my grandma's life in Chicago, as well as in South Haven and beyond, makes me cry. I know how much you all meant to her, and it's so heartwarming to know how much she meant to you. So as some of you know, I'm Jake, and if you met me at one point when I was with my grandma, you already knew this because she probably would have told you, as she always did, this is Jake, he's my youngest grandson, you know? It meant a lot to me that she was always proud of the person that I am. I have long thought about how it is such a beautiful human phenomenon that we are all pieces of our family that come before us. I like to think about the bits of me that come from my mom, and my dad, and my grandparents, and especially recently, the parts of me that come from Grandma Lois. For example, it's not by accident that my grandma and I both love sports. My grandma took me to my first Major League Baseball game and NBA basketball game when I was a young, impressionable kid. We then spent the rest of our lives together watching sporting events on TV, aligning our rooting interests, making sure we were on the same page watching the game. We would root for Illinois teams, and later we would both root for the University of Maryland, where I went to college. The challenging part, though, of course, is when the Illinois teams were playing the Maryland teams, but we worked out a good system and had a mutual understanding. We both loved the underdogs. She taught me at an early age that our favorite players didn't necessarily have to be the best players. Sometimes the most special players were the ones that played with a zest and a zeal that was contagious to their fellow players and fans. That's why when the Bulls were great a few years ago, when Derrick Rose was everybody's favorite player, one of Grandma's favorite player was a bench player who only played a few minutes a game. His name was Tony Snell. I rooted for the underdogs, and my favorite player was never the most popular player, but it was Tony Snell might have been a little too much. I bring this up because I remember one year when I was in college, I got a letter from my grandma. I opened it up, and a small snippet came out from the Sun-Times. I was a little confused until I turned the snippet over, and it was a box score from the Bulls game, and on it was a big red circle with marking Tony Snell, and it said he had 15 points. And Grandma Lois wrote, Jake, I wanted to make sure that you knew that Tony Snell had a great game. Love, Grandma. So we can be sure I definitely inherited my passion of sports from my grandma. And though I'd also like to say that I inherited my grandma's level of kindness and gregarious nature, I am certain only a few people can truly match her. The touching stories and outpouring of personal affection shared by so many is incredibly moving and reaffirms everything I know about Grandma. She truly enjoyed connecting with each and every person that she crossed paths with in life. She always was ready to listen to their stories and hear their backgrounds and then share hers. And I am certain that this was the case until her final day. I feel so fortunate that I was able to spend some of those days by her side with my mom and with our family, sharing our favorite stories from my grandma's long and fulfilling life, talking about how much she loved my papa, my late Uncle Larry, her late sister June, her grandchildren, her dogs, rescue animals, South Haven, the Bulls, cocktail hour, her mall in Lincolnwood, her friends, her cousins, and everything in between. My grandma was sleeping peacefully one of those nights when a nurse who was not on duty that particular shift locked eyes with me in the halls of Highland Park Hospital. She said, "Hey, is your grandmother awake?" I said, "No, she hadn't woken up in a little while now." And she sighed. The nurse said, "Okay, I'm not assigned to her anymore, but please let me know when she does. I just really want to say hello again. Your grandma's amazing." The nurse told us that the night before, even as her illness was taking hold, that she had woken up and chatted enjoyably with the staff monitoring her. And after a few minutes, my grandma had called for a round of cheers with the attending nurses. I think my grandma's small water cup had to suffice at that time. So Grandma Lois, GGLG, I can't imagine my life and the person I am today without your immense impact. I am forever grateful and proud to be your grandson. Here's to cheersing again.
All right, for mine, I have to put on her beloved sweatshirt, her GGLG sweatshirt with all of her great-grandchildren's names in the back that we made for her when she was going through radiation to keep her warm, and she loved this. All right. Dear Grandma Lo, As I held your hand as you took your final breaths, I wondered, what do you say to someone who has left a legacy filled of love, smiles, and happiness? Thank you. Thank you for teaching me how to always smile and be positive about life. You had a heart of gold and touched everyone you met. You never had a mean thing to say about anyone. You gave everyone a chance, and you have accepted everyone for who they were. You befriended any person you could and talked to literally anyone and made them feel special. Over this past week, I've had a lot of time to reflect on our relationship and think of all our memories together. We have been so fortunate to create years of memories and celebrate many milestones together, along with endless amounts of jewelry that you were constantly gifting to me, like this moon necklace that I never take off. But for today, there are two of our regular settings which cannot be left out of the conversation. The first place I want to talk about is Grandma's Mall, which I recently came to learn is really called Lincolnwood Mall. Growing up, it was our main meeting place. We would walk to the food court to meet you and see you and Papa waiting for us. You would always be there early, just like at the Bulls game when we would get there early and leave during the third quarter, but that is a conversation for a different time. The Subway guy, as we called him, would give us discounts on our lunch at the food court because he loved you and you were always talking to him. We would spend countless hours shopping where you always had to buy us something. The kiosk staff knew our whole family story and you were always giving them candy. On my holiday or summer breaks from school, I would meet you and your girlfriends for coffee and walking around the mall. It was mainly coffee and gossiping, as I think we would make only one lap around the mall. In your true fashion, there was a group of women who were not friendly. You were never upset by this and said everyone has hardships, so it's important to just smile. And guess who became friends? As I got older, when Greg and I started dating, we met you and Papa at the mall to have drinks before heading to the city. I can vividly remember sitting at the table having a beer together. South Haven. The second place that holds so many memories is, of course, South Haven. We've spent every single summer of my life going there with you. And when I was a kid, we would live there with you for 8+ weeks. You were the queen of the North Beach. Our 4 p.m. cocktail hour will forever continue in your legacy. So many memories come racing back. Walking to the pier when I was 6, singing Skidamarinka-dinka-dink, making brownies together and forgetting the flour, going to the McDonald's drive-thru after swim lessons and hearing you and Mom fighting over who was going to get to pay for the meal, going to the local nail salon and making you get the color neon orange on your nails, having our morning coffee and donuts on the porch and many cheers that went along with it, Greg and I going for breakfast with you and Papa before we would return to St. Louis, which would always land us in traffic, but we continued to do it because we loved those moments with you. Growing up during the summer nights, you and I would sit on the porch swing together, looking at the stars and just talking. I will hold those nights close to my heart. One of my favorite memories was during my bachelorette party in Michigan. We were on our way to the oh-so-famous Captain Lou's in South Haven, so of course we had to stop at the house to have a drink with you. So the limo pulled up to the house and 10 girls came spilling out of the limo. We all sat around and had a drink with you and Papa. I think that sums up our relationship. I mean, who else goes and has a drink with their grandparents during their bachelorette party? I'm having such a hard time summing you up in this letter because you were not only a part of my life for the past 33 years, but for 6 years you took on the ultimate, most famous role of GGLG, Great Grandma Lois Goldfein, a name picked by you as a joke and what everyone came to know you as. Braylon and Grayson's understanding of old was always compared to GGLG. They would say, but is GGLG older? You were the best babysitter, spending hours and hours holding each baby as they slept peacefully in your arms, giving them your finger to suck on, your gentle shushing, or sometimes even your medicine bottle to use as a rattle. You and I spent a lot of hours together on the couch as I nursed, and you would always offer to nurse them with the caveat of, but I only have one boob. Now, let's talk about money. At first, it started out as $5 per person, and somehow through the years, maybe through inflation, it got more and more per person, and not just handing out the money when we arrived, but throughout our entire stay. Now that you are gone, Braylon asked me how he will ever get money again. And you shared in their love of lollipops and candy. The kids would always sneak into your room and find lollipops or chocolate and ask if they could have some of GGLG's candy. But no sneaking was needed. You were always giving them candy anyways. I loved watching them cook with you, share your heated blanket with them to watch a movie or sporting event, feeding them, reading to them, cheersing with their milk cups, or hearing them say when we would FaceTime, "Can I see GGLG?" Your legacy will live on through them, not only in these memories, but of course through South Haven. To think 5 generations have felt the South Haven sand in their toes is pretty incredible. Watching them talk with you on the porch swing, watching the fireworks together, birthday and holiday celebrations, doing exercises with you on the porch, never went unnoticed on just how special these South Haven moments were. Grandma, whenever I would talk to you on the phone or in person, you would always ask how the weather is. So I will tell you, the weather today is actually pretty nice and sunny. Then you would always ask me when you're going to see me again. I don't know the next time I will see you, but for now I know you'll be fine, Goldfein. Cheers, Grandma. Love your favorite granddaughter no matter what.
April 12th. Yeah, so Grandma and I shared a birthday. There's always a special connection from day one. She liked to tell everyone about this. You know, April 12th, she'd tell the smoothie maker at the mall, or the janitorial staff, or her barista friend. You know, if we're walking through her mall, we'd have to stop by and see my friend, she would say, but that could mean any of the 15 different mall workers that day. And it wouldn't matter if it was November or the middle of the summer, she would proudly engage whoever we were near. These are my grandkids I was telling you about. Yeah, April 12th. Never met anyone who was more outgoing and engaging than my grandma. Few could match her sincerity and kindness. And even if sometimes that drove my mom nuts. Mom, did you invite them for Thanksgiving? My mother would jokingly ask, although I'm sure there was a small part of her that was wondering if she needed to plan for an extra place setting, following whatever conversation my grandmother was having with the bathroom custodian that day. My grandmother never had anything mean to say, and I'm confident that she didn't harbor any negative thoughts to anyone. Her words always felt like their purpose was to make someone smile, but it occasionally backfired. You see, my grandma loved to feed people. Known as the candy lady at the Bulls games, she'd distribute chocolate and gummies throughout our section, which I think was far more anticipated than the t-shirt cannon. Her Thanksgiving turkey tasted as good as it was to make. You know what the secret is? She'd ask. Wine. A little for the turkey, a little for grandma. A little for the turkey, a little for grandma. And she'd always make a Jell-O mold, even if I were the only one to eat it. And she loved to see us full. And so during the period where my dietary goal was to eat as much as possible, she took joy in taking us to the Chinese buffet in South Haven. Beforehand, she'd talk up the event like it was a competition to get our money's worth. She'd joke, I hope you leave some food for the rest of us. And I'd laugh at this same joke before each trip to the buffet. But just as the stars occasionally align, so did the timing of our last trip to the buffet together, where as we were walking in from the parking lot, my arms supporting hers, a couple exited from the restaurant. Rather large couple. And my grandma smiled at them, and as she does to everyone. When she received a smile in return, it was the green light for her to tell this same joke. Caught off guard, I had to hustle my elderly grandmother into the restaurant, who had no idea that BMI would impact the way that this joke would land. I tell this story today with hesitation, but her sincerity and joviality were even more striking in these rare accidents. It'd be impossible to think of places like South Haven or teams like the Bulls or White Sox without thinking of my grandmother. The great fortune of spending so much time with my grandma Lois is not lost on me. She's tied to many of my most salient childhood memories, and the reason why Sirius by the Alan Parsons Project still makes my heart race. Yet some of my most cherished memories of her are simple ones. Watching the sunset with her in South Haven, listening to this wind up somewhere over the rainbow that she'd play for me, which is why I'm still emotionally triggered by Israel Kamikamovole, or winning a few pennies from her at Kaluki. Of course, the Bulls were a major part of my grandmother's life, and through her and my grandfather's incredible generosity, a major defining feature of my childhood. The last picture I have together with my grandma at a Bulls game I'm standing with her at center court, her arm through mine, and despite her blue cane, she's standing tall, her cheeks pulled in, and she's making this face of clear resolve and authority in this situation. And I know my mother and dad have seen this all too often in the last few years. Across from us is ESPN's Mike Breen, who is leading that day's NBA on ABC broadcast. His neck is cocked to the side, arms out as if pleading with her, a child imploring, "Come on, Mom." I love this picture. It clearly shows her as a powerful woman as she stands up to this national TV commentator. It also shows her ability to impact everyone she encountered. She was respected and loved, so easy to engage with. She was active in her approach towards everyone that crossed her life's path. Her joy was through others and her shared love of friends, family, South Haven, and basketball. And so when Mike Breen approached us at center court and said, "Ma'am, it's an honor to meet you. I'm curious, out of all the players you've watched over the decades following the Bulls, who's your favorite?" Now, it's not lost on me that above our heads are giant banners with the names Bob Love, Jerry Sloan, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen. But without missing a beat, my grandmother responds, "Johnny Red Kerr, a friend of my grandparents and whose autograph I must have had 20 times over the years of attending games together, Tony Snell, and Nate Robinson." Now, I can only imagine that this photo of Mike Breen, lost in confusion and in near desperation-like appeal, is in response to trying to process how this scrappy player, who at 5'9" was way short by NBA standards, and who only played a single season with the Bulls several years before this moment, was one of the favorite players of this old woman who had been a devoted fan for the last 5 decades. And to be honest, I was a little surprised too at the time. But since her passing, I've been thinking a lot about that moment, at first because it was silly, but then because it was revealing. See, Nate's style of play was just like that of my grandfather's. My grandmother would describe him as a fast, hardworking, and scrappy, which was fitting given my grandfather's future career as a scrap metal dealer. And similar to my papa, the rest of the league towered over him. Yet, they both succeeded. And I can only imagine that my grandma saw my papa in the way that Nate played, whose health at the time was drastically fading during Nate's 1-year stint with the Bulls. So while Breen seemed distraught by this response, I completely understand it. And knowing my grandmother, of course she would choose players that connected her even more closely to family. It didn't matter if they didn't win multiple MVPs or change the global nature of the game, but it connected her to her family, her greatest value. So with Breen's arms open and pleading, "Come on, is there anyone else that stands out over the years?" my grandmother responded, "Rodman." That was my grandmother.
Well, is this one? You can see very clearly the impact that a grandparent can have on her grandchildren. So much given to so many people. As her son-in-law, I thought I would end our eulogies with my perspective of her. Sweet, kind, gentle, friendly, always so nice. Qualities that describe my memory of my mother-in-law, and the same words found in the deeply felt emotional sentiments and outpouring of heartfelt condolences from family, relatives, friends of all generations, near and far. Our home is adorned with fragrance of beautiful flower bouquets sent from admirers across generations, reflecting the warmth and brightness of her spirit. Everyone, and I mean everyone, really just loved Lois, AKA Mom, as she got such pleasure me calling her. Kindness, sweetness, gentleness, and friendliness, happiness are personality qualities available to most everyone. But few know and radiate with genuine kindness and sweetness. Kindness and sweetness are authentic. They are woven into one's soul, Lois's soul. Who you saw, she was. What she said, she meant. Her hugs were her affection, and her kisses, her love. She defined congeniality, though I doubt she ever knew what it meant. Lois was kind and accepting to those who weren't, often befriending them with warm embrace. Her invitations to our Thanksgiving dinners not beyond her. Lois's greatest affections and memories were embedded in South Haven, her home away from home for over 90 years. I have often wondered how much growing up and spending countless days on the sunny beach, playing in the lake with neighbors, friends, and relatives, and with sand between her toes really shaped her personality. The woman, friend, wife, mom, grandma, and great-grandma she had become. My story with Mom began with my cheering on the Bulls at my whim. Ellen's mom and dad were season ticket holders, and I was in heaven, which became the ongoing joke about why I married Ellen. And then there were Lois's stable of American saddlebred horses. I'm not sure if she ever really embraced the sport, but Lois loved it because of her Eddie, who she loved even more. And she passionately cheered for Larry and Ellen at the horses. Lois and I connected, talking endlessly in the bleachers, she teaching me about her love for her family more than the sport. In fact, I came to learn over the years, for Mom, it was never as much about what we were doing as it was about her love and unbridled loyalty for all of us, family and friends alike. South Haven was her haven. It was her heaven, her safe place. The landscape of her life filled with memories and endless stories woven into her soul from infancy through her final days. It was where her older sister tragically died, and it was also where Ellen and I became engaged on the North Pier. Lois paraded us around town with overflowing pride like we were royalty. After all, she was the matriarch, the queen of the North Beach. Lois, like her mother, Nana Jean, did for her, made sure that Larry and Ellen would spend endless summers growing up there. And she was just as certain that her grandchildren would follow. And they did. South Haven forever, part of who they are, calling to them every summer. Lois's legacy and the house she called the cottage for 80 years lived on through her 5 grandchildren who already loved the sand between their toes. Lois's middle-aged years were joyful, filled with charity work, volunteering, the horses and bulls, traveling with friends calling themselves the Fun Club, all embracing her love for Eddie. During those years, Lois became a grandma, and you can only imagine how that went. She loved her expanded identity and role in life, and she made sure that everybody knew it, with endless pictures, mall shopping trips, gifts, and holiday cards with dollars of love and special events. And of course, always South Haven. Lois's aging years were not as kind to her. Larry's tragic death forever changed her joyful and innocent outlook on her life and family. She was tireless in her decades of care for her mother, Nana Jean, who received the presidential 100-year celebration letter. And all the while, managing Eddie's failing health, multiple heart surgeries, and dementia. She herself endured breast cancer and its return, and never fully recovered from her broken hip with chronic leg pain. And yet, with every reason to fade into depression, Lois persevered as if the misery in her life did not exist. The scores of friends and friendships she developed and nurtured over these years never had a clue about any of this. I believe that her pleasant demeanor, her kind soul, and uncomplicated character shielded and protected her. She would tell me at times that she was never depressed, sometimes just sad. From her inner sadness evolved the boundless love and affection she had for her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Living together day in and day out over the final years of her life taught me a lot about Lois, which is why I'm telling you her story, enriched with the history of her memories, which garners our respect and requests our reciprocation of her love and affection. And while she wasn't prepared for all of this, all she would ask of us is to smile and with joy exclaim together, "Cheers for her life well lived." And I say to you, Lois, to you, Mom, you know we thought you'd live forever, and though your kind heart and soul probably wore out your body, your gentle, loving spirit has become part of all of our lives that you have touched, and that part of you will live on forever.
In his sorrow, Job cried out, Adonai Natan, v'Adonai lakach, Yehi Shem Adonai mevarach. God has given and God has taken away. Death and sorrow are no strangers to those of us gathered here to honor Lois Goldfein. With Job we say, Adonai Natan, God you have given. You gave us a loved one who will not be forgotten. For all that was good and enduring in her life, we offer the deepest thanks of our hearts. Adonai lakach, God you have taken away. We pray for the strength to turn our broken hearts into an altar of trust, before which we acknowledge your sovereignty and affirm Lois's love. What more is there for me to say other than how beautiful the words are of those who truly knew her soul and were such a deep part of her soul? It's clear that Lois's life was one defined by simple and complete joys, was one filled with love and the sweetness that she took in and the sweetness that she was always happy to give away. In our tradition, we speak of an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor, a woman of strength and spirit. And she shows her spirit by giving her strength to others. Lois indeed was an Eshet Chayil. Her love was strong and uncomplicated. She was genuine and sweet. And she brought the truest ideal of tzedakah into the world. Some might translate this word tzedakah as charity, but Lois knew that the simple giving away wasn't the most important thing in the world. Instead, through her example, all that knew her learned that we gain more by giving ourselves to others. Our care, our compassion, our curiosity, our love. Lois knew that righteousness is found in that connection that we create by giving. In the depths of grief, O God, keep these best parts of Lois's presence and memory strong, so that those who loved her may rely on that strength. We grieve for what might have been, for joys unrealized, for tasks undone, for hopes thwarted, for loves blighted, and challenges unmet. Help us to bring consolation to her family, friends, and her community. Help us to raise them from the depths of their sorrow, slowly and lovingly. Help us to lead them from the night of desolation to the dawn of another. Then the memory of their beloved mother, grandmother, Gigi, LG, and friend will be able to return gently and peacefully to their hearts. May her memory live among each of us, allaying grief and instructing in the ways of living, helping each and every one to find meaning in the mystery of eternal life. Zichrona Livracha, may Lois Goldfein's memory always and forever be a blessing. We're given two prayers to say at moments like this. One prayer called El Malei Rachamim speaks of the eternal nature of Lois's soul, and how even though she never complained, even though she always found comfort in the people around her, now she can finally and forever be at peace. This prayer, El Malei Rachamim, asks for that eternal soul to forever find its resting place. And its companion, Kadisha Tom, the mourner's Kaddish, asks for the blessings that that soul brought to so many continue forever. That all of those blessings, everything that she was, stays so strong as if she were sitting right next to us. These prayers come together, one as a prayer for her, one as a prayer for all of you, one as a prayer for this moment, and one as a prayer for her eternity. We can find this prayer, this partnership of prayers, in our pamphlet. Please rise if you are able. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bimramim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Im Kedoshim Utorim, Kizohar Harakia Mazhirim, and Nishmat Lois Goldfein Shel Chalcha Leolama, Ba'al Harachamim Yastireha B'seter Knafav Leolamim, Bitzror HaChayim and Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachlata, V'tanuach B'shalom El Mishkavam, V'nomar Amen. The translation can be found on the inside of our pamphlet. We read together. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of thy presence, among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament unto the soul of Lois Goldfein, who has come unto eternity. Lord of mercy, bring her under the cover of thy wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Be God's possession, and may her repose be peace. Amen. May the love and eternal connection of our souls give us strength as we turn to recite those words hallowed by time. Sanctifying the name of God, we honor the memory of Lois Goldfein with the words on the back of our pamphlet of Kadisha Tom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayachon u'vyomechon u'v'chayed kol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal, shmei d'kudsha b'rechu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiram be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, Veimru. Amen. May Lois's memory forever be a blessing. And together we say, Amen. Please be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Shiva will be by the stage area. Everyone is invited to that area for Shiva. Everyone will be able to make a toast, to get a Tootsie Roll, and offer a cheers in her memory. Memorial contributions to the orphans of the storm would be appreciated. For those of you who are here, that information is on the service folder. And for those of you who are on live stream, that information is on the funeral home's website. This time I invite everyone to rise and stand in place as we escort her family to the stage area and everyone can follow. This concludes the service.